In July of 1986, a crew of workers at a brick factory in southwestern China were digging clay out of the ground, the way they did every day. And then one of their shovels struck something hard, about 2 meters down. What they had found was a pit. And the pit was full of gods. Hundreds of objects, packed into the earth. Bronze, jade, gold, 60 elephant tusks, laid across the top like a roof. And faces. Enormous bronze faces, with eyes that bulged out of their sockets on stalks, like the lenses of a telescope. Faces larger than any human head. Faces that no one in China had ever seen before. But here is the strange part. Every single object in that pit had been deliberately broken, smashed, burned in a great fire, and then buried, carefully, by the people who made them. This was a civilization that had built thousands of these treasures, and then destroyed its own gods, and laid them in the ground, more than 3,000 years ago. We do not know what they called themselves. We cannot read a single word they wrote, because they left no words at all. They built no royal tombs we have found, and they left no bodies. This is the story of Sanxingdui, the civilization that left us everything, except the one thing we wanted most. We have their faces. We will never have their names. To understand why Sanxingdui is so strange, you have to understand where it is. And where it is a place that was supposed to be empty. Deep in the southwest of China lies the province of Sichuan, a vast lowland basin, ringed on every side by some of the steepest mountains in Asia. For most of Chinese history, getting into Sichuan was so difficult that a famous poem declared the road into it was harder than the road to heaven. But inside that ring of mountains lies the Chengdu plain, flat, warm, watered by rivers, and astonishingly fertile. And the official story of Chinese civilization does not begin here. It begins 1,500 kilometers to the north, on the Yellow River, the cradle, the source, the single place from which everything else was supposed to have spread. Sanxingdui was not supposed to be there at all. The first clue came in 1929. A farmer named Yan Daocheng was digging a ditch beside his house when his hoe turned up a pile of polished jade discs and blades. A first excavation came in 1934, and then stopped, swallowed by decades of war and revolution. For half a century, the jade sat in storage, and almost no one thought about the field they came from. But underneath those fields was a city. A real one, with rammed earth walls enclosing more than 3.5 square kilometers. It had been built around 1600 BC, and at its height it was one of the largest cities anywhere in Eastern Asia. This was the same era as the Shang dynasty, the first Chinese dynasty we can prove existed, far away on the Yellow River. The Shang were master bronze casters. They made ritual cauldrons and wine vessels, covered in fine geometric patterns, for offerings to their ancestors. The people of Sanxingdui were master bronze casters too. But they did not make cauldrons. They made faces, trees, eyes, things no Shang craftsman would have recognized. Two great Bronze Age civilizations, alive at the same moment, 1,000 kilometers apart, and they did not look anything like each other. Archaeologists believe Sanxingdui belonged to a kingdom that much later Chinese texts would call Shu. But those texts were written more than 1,000 years after the city was abandoned. They speak of half-legendary kings, Cansong, Borguan, Yofu, Duyo, the way Greek myths speak of heroes. Whether any of them were real, we cannot say. Because the people of Sanxingdui themselves wrote nothing down. Not one inscription. Not one symbol we can read. Even the name Sanxingdui is not theirs. It means 3-star mounds, and it describes 3 low hills of earth that sat on the site in modern times. It is the name of the ground. It is not the name of the people. So if they left no words, what did they leave? They left an art unlike anything else in the ancient world. Start with the masks. The largest of them is nearly 1.5 meters wide. Its eyes do not sit flat in the face. They thrust forward on cylinders, 16 centimeters out into the air, ending in flat discs, eyes straining to see something we cannot. These were never meant to be worn. They are too large, too heavy. They were made to be mounted, raised up, and worshipped. Then there is the standing figure. A bronze man, 2 meters and 60 centimeters tall on his pedestal, weighing 180 kilograms. He is the largest, oldest life-size bronze statue ever found in the world. He stands barefoot on a throne, wrapped in patterned robes, his enormous hands curved into rings in front of his chest, as if he is holding something. An elephant tusk, perhaps. or something that has not survived. We do not know if he is a king, a priest, or a god. Possibly he was all three at once. And then there is the tree. A bronze tree, almost 4 meters tall, the single largest bronze object surviving from the ancient world. Birds perch in its branches. A dragon slides down its trunk toward the ground. It may be a cosmic tree, a ladder between earth and sky, or a tree that holds the sun. The people of Sanxingdui loved gold, too, and that, on its own, is a mystery. Because the civilizations of the Yellow River prized jade and bronze. They did not treasure gold. Sanxingdui did. They beat gold into thin foil and wrapped it around bronze heads, giving them shining golden faces. They made a golden mask. And they made a staff, 1.5 meters of wood, sheathed in gold, engraved with fish, birds, and arrows. A scepter of a kind that simply did not exist in the rest of early China. And everywhere, on the masks, on the walls of the city, cast as objects on their own, there are eyes. Bulging eyes. Diamond-shaped eyes. Bronze eyes by the dozen. Whoever these people were, they were obsessed with the act of seeing. To make all of this, they had to be master metallurgists. They added lead to the usual mix of copper and tin, which let them pour bronze into shapes far larger and more daring than their northern neighbors ever attempted. And this is the heart of the puzzle. Nothing like these objects exists anywhere else in China at this time. Or anywhere else on Earth. There is no slow build-up to them. No simpler, earlier versions in the ground beneath them. They appear, fully formed, brilliant, and completely alien. For a long time, that strangeness was almost too much. It was easier, for some, to imagine the masks had come from outer space than to accept the truth. And the truth is harder, and far more interesting. A real human civilization, here, on the Chengdu plain, invented its own way of seeing the universe, and shared it with no one. Now we come back to the pits. Because the pits are the deepest mystery of all. They are not tombs. There are no bodies in them. No king laid to rest with his treasures. Instead, the objects were treated like sacrifices. The bronzes were broken apart. The masks were thrown into a fire so hot it warped and melted them. The ivory was burned. And then all of it, the shattered, scorched remains of a kingdom's holiest objects, was arranged in the pits and covered over with earth. This was not looting. It was not war. The people who did this were careful. They were reverent. They were burying their own gods on purpose. For 35 years, we knew of only the 2 pits found in 1986. Then, beginning in 2019, archaeologists searching the same field found 6 more. Working under climate-controlled tents, in silk gowns to keep contamination out, they lifted out object after object, bronze altars, a bronze box shaped like a tortoiseshell with a piece of jade sealed inside, a creature with a human head and a serpent's body. By the time they finished, the 8 pits had given up more than 17,000 artifacts. And then something happened that felt almost like a message across time. A fragment of bronze pulled from one of the new pits, opened in 2021, was found to fit perfectly onto a fragment dug up in 1986, pieces of the same statue, separated by 36 years of digging. Using 3D scanning and artificial intelligence, conservators began matching the pieces. A kneeling man, balancing a sacred wine vessel on his head, riding a bronze beast, assembled from parts found in 3 different pits. The people of Sanxingdui smashed their gods into pieces and scattered them across the ground. And 3,000 years later, we are putting them back together, one fragment at a time. But the question underneath it all does not go away. Why? Why would a civilization pour all its wealth, all its skill, all its faith into making these things, and then destroy them with its own hands? Was it the death of a king, who took his gods with him? The fall of one dynasty and the cleansing of another? A ritual to end a plague, or a flood, or a curse? Or was it a farewell, the careful, deliberate closing of a world, by people who knew they were leaving? We have the broken gods. We do not have the reason. Because not long after the pits were filled, around 3,000 years ago, the city itself was abandoned. The great walls were left to soften back into mounds of earth. The workshops went cold. The people walked away. What drove them out, we are still trying to learn. In the layers of soil, geologists have found the signature of disaster, evidence of massive flooding, and possibly an earthquake, near the time of the end. A river may have changed its course. The fields may have failed. Or a rival people may have arrived. We do not know which, or whether it was all of them at once. But the people did not simply die out. We can follow them. About 40 kilometers away, near modern Chengdu, a new settlement rose at a place we now call Jinsha. And at Jinsha, archaeologists found the same world, continued, gold foil, jade, ivory, and a famous disk of gold cut into the shape of 4 birds circling the sun. The art is simpler. The masks are gone. But the bloodline of the culture is unmistakable. The people of Sanxingdui did not vanish in a single night. They moved, and they became something quieter. The kingdom of Shu lived on, in legend and in fragments, for centuries more. Until, in the year 316 BC, an army from the northern state of Qin marched through the mountains, conquered Shu, and folded it into the empire that would soon become the first unified China. And after that, silence. The great bronze faces stayed in the ground. The histories of the north did not record them. The name of the city, the name of its kings, the name of its god, all of it slipped out of human memory. This is a different kind of vanishing from the ones we have seen. The Piu were forgotten as a people. The Champa lost their nation but kept their blood. Sanxingdui was not destroyed by an enemy, and it was not slowly absorbed. Its people closed it themselves, walked away, and let 3,000 years of silence do the rest. When the masks finally came back into the light in 1986, they caused a problem. Because the official story of China had always been a story of one cradle, the Yellow River, from which civilization spread outward to everyone else. Sanxingdui did not fit that story. It was too far away, too early, too brilliant, and too completely its own. It forced a rewrite. China, scholars now accept, did not grow from a single seed. It grew from many, a constellation of separate Bronze Age cultures, of which the people of the Chengdu plain were among the most dazzling and the most independent. And there is one last thread, thin, and almost unbearably haunting. 1,000 years after Sanxingdui fell, a Chinese chronicle recorded an old legend of the first king of Shu. His name was Cansong, and the texts say he had protruding eyes. Protruding eyes. The same impossible, bulging, staring eyes that thrust out of the largest bronze mask in the pit. It is possible that, when everything else was gone, the city, the language, the gods, the name, one detail survived, passed down as myth, for 1,000 years, the memory of a king who could see further than other men. And so we are left with the strangest loss of the three. The Piu lost their people. The Champa lost their country. Sanxingdui kept everything, the art, the skill, the gods themselves, and lost only its voice. No writing. No name. No story told in its own words. We can stand in front of 1,000 faces, and not read a single one. In 2023, a new museum opened on the Chengdu plain to hold them. When tickets first went on sale, 11,000 of them sold out in 10 minutes. People came by the million, just to stand in front of the masks. And the masks stared back, over their heads, out through the glass, with those long bronze eyes, looking at something none of us can see. We gave them a name. Sanxingdui. But that is the name of the field where we found them. It is not the name they gave themselves. That name burned away 3,000 years ago, and it is never coming back. They left us everything except the one thing we wanted most, to know who they were. In the next video, we'll travel far to the west, to a hill in southern Turkey, where people with no writing, no farms, and no metal tools carved temples out of stone the size of houses. They built it 7,000 years before the pyramids. It is the oldest temple on earth, and it was raised by people who, by every rule we thought we knew, should not have been able to build it at all. That's Göbekli Tepe. Subscribe so you don't miss it.